Mini Bikes and Dinghies said, have you ever seen a naked strongman?
Have I ever seen a naked strongman?
Not including yourself.
Yes.
Which one?
Terry Hollands is always naked. Go and there's a funny interview. Darren Sadler's being interviewed at one of the World's Strongest Man contests, and at the back of it's in front of the athlete's tent, and if you look at the back, you can see Terry Holland's ass. I don't think the camera guys picked up on it.
Seth Carpenter asked, what's the scariest or most dangerous event you've ever had to perform? World's Strongest Man.
The most dangerous event I ever did, and this isn't just from personal experience, this is literally watching everyone do it, was the Norse Hammer, 2015. It was like an adapted Fingal's Finger. And the Fingal's Finger is a fun, good event. It's challenging, it looks good, but they tried to make it harder by putting this like hammerhead on the end of it. So you couldn't even lift it in the same manner. You had to kind of come around the side of it. And no one had tested this. So when we got to Worlds and the athletes tested it, we were supposed to do 5 of these. And people were struggling to flip the first one in the training yard. So they actually cut it down to only do 3. The only person that managed to do all 3 was Thor, who, if you ever watch some of the Fingal's Fingers performance he did, he was incredible at them, and he still made it look hard. I tore my tricep doing this event. And my bicep, actually. I got a small tear in my bicep, a bad tear in my tricep. And I managed to actually beat a few of the guys in my group. I was kind of almost head-to-head with Zadrunas. He only did 2. So it was just a really poorly thought-out event. Very, very dangerous, injured a lot of people, and has never been back since.
Josh Thigpen actually passed out. He blacked out during it, didn't he? Which was quite scary.
Yeah, it was just a really awful event. So many athletes just hated it. It was just injury waiting to happen. It just wasn't very smart.
YouTube Connolly family asked, did it annoy you, like it did some of the other athletes, that Thor would show up with so many people to support him?
No. People supporting any athlete never annoyed me in the slightest, and Thor's family have always been very respectful to me. They're quite intimidating, I think, if you're not used to it. When he's competing, there was a lot of cheering and supporting, but never any negativeness. When I compete, they would clap and cheer for me, not in the same manner that they would for Thor, obviously, but you wouldn't expect them to. Whereas, my family would be screaming off the top of their lungs. Liz loses her voice when she's at a strongman competition. When it's someone that's important to you, then you're going to support them. And just the fact that he had a large family that were willing to come out and support him, I think shows how close-knit they are. I would have loved to have been able to bring, my mum, my brother, my friends out to all these competitions, but I just couldn't at the time. So it's never, ever been a negative thought towards them at all. They're lovely people. And I think if anyone is intimidated by them, then they obviously haven't spoken to them behind the scenes, because they're just the most gentle, nice, kind people.
Preston Personal asked, when you're competing at the World's Strongest Man, even though you want to win, do you subliminally pick the winner in your head? Like, do you go in thinking that guy's probably going to win?
You go in knowing who the favourites are, but I never go into a competition saying that's going to happen, because so many variables affect competition, and as an athlete you've got to focus on your own performance. Naturally you'll go in and say, right, this guy's the favourite, and we all know, we compete against each other more than once a year. You see what guys are capable of, and you get a good understanding of what level they're at. So you kind of know who's good at certain things, but you don't know who's turned up in the best shape. You don't know what's gone on behind the scenes. There's so many factors that can affect athletes' performances. I know this so well from my own career. There's certain things that can happen behind the scenes that will affect your performance, and there's no reason to say those things aren't happening to other people. I think a lot of the time as fans we just expect the top athletes to have like the perfect run up to a contest, and the reality is life gets in the way sometimes. So as an athlete, I go into a competition focusing on my own performance, focusing on what I can control, and then not worrying about anything else. But yes, of course, who you'll expect to do well on certain things. You know who the favourites are, but that doesn't mean, it's set in stone that those things will happen.
William Robertson asked, what was Mike Jenkins like to compete against at World's Strongest Man, and how do you think he would fare if he was still here today competing?
Mike is genuinely, and I mean this, like genuinely, one of the nicest people I've ever met. I don't know a single athlete that has ever had a bad word to say about him. He was an incredible strongman, and I truly believe he would have gone on to win the World's Strongest Man title. Lovely person behind the scenes, but so strong, so caring of everyone. You know, he supported everyone. He would share training kind of philosophies and ideas and tips. You know, I picked up things from him from behind the scenes to help with my own training. Just a really good guy, someone that so many of us look up to or looked up to and think about still. And genuinely, yes, I believe he would have gone on to be the world's strongest man.
Ipoli asked, who was the best competitor you've ever faced?
So many great athletes that I've competed against and watched over the years. You know, there's a big long list of amazing athletes, but the one man that really stood out in terms of people I've competed against was Mariusz Pudzianowski. He was the guy that was sort of top of the ladder, if you like, when I first got into strongman, and he just had this aura about him. He just always wanted to better himself. No matter what the event, he gave 110%. He was an animal, and you know, a 5-time world champion for a reason. He was a real serious competitor.
Robert Yang said, he has a few questions. How comes some of the groups do different events? So one will have squats, one will have deadlift, for example. And do the athletes get a say in which of these groups they'll fall into? And what if not, then why not give all of the athletes the same events?
Okay, so I think the reason behind the different events in different groups is to make TV shows a little bit more entertaining and a bit of variety. That's my guess. I don't know for sure, but that's what I will hazard a guess at. And no, the athletes don't get a say in which groups they go in.
Carlos Hernandez asked, which injury is everyone trying to avoid the most?
Every injury. It's do you know what? I think as a strongman, you don't think about injuries. If you're thinking about injuries, then you're holding yourself back. So when they're competing, they're not really thinking about avoiding injuries. Obviously, you do everything you can to avoid an injury. You need to make sure your technique is solid on movements. You need to make sure you stay hydrated. You need to make sure you're eating well. You know, there's lots of things you put in place, recovery methods. But when it comes down to crunch time and it's competing, all they're thinking about is winning and doing the best that they can. And in any sport, there's always that risk of injury when you're pushing to those limits. So honestly, if you're so concerned with injuries, you're probably best not worrying about doing a sport like this, or any sport in fact, because when you push to those absolute limits, that shouldn't be the thought that's in the back of your head. And if it is, it's going to hold you back on what you're capable of. So I think all the guys you see at World's Strongest Man, yes, they hate getting injured. They want to avoid it. But they all understand there is a certain element of risk when you push to these limits and these levels. And if those thoughts are creeping into your head while you're about to compete, then you're going to be holding back and the other guys are going to perform better. So as bad as injuries are, and it's sad when they happen, it's not a thought process that should go through an elite athlete's head at all.
The Average Cuba asked, what was an event that you really liked that most people disliked?
I really like the yoke, and a lot of people don't like that. It's one of those events when it's on you for a long time, it's brutal and it can absolutely destroy your central nervous system. Whereas I think because I was good at it and I can get through it quickly, it used to be slightly more, it used to conserve a little bit more energy for someone like myself. I actually really like the axle as well, because the issue with the axle is cleaning it from the floor to your shoulders, and I wasn't too bad at getting the axle from the floor to my shoulders. Ended up beating a lot of guys that could probably press more than me, but the first phase of the lift they didn't like so much. And I like Hercules hold events that it's grip strength but it's pain as well, and I quite enjoy that.
Okay, a similar question. Chris Solomon asked, what's the worst or most disliked event by yourself and the other competitors?
Oh, by myself, 100% is the duck walk. I absolutely hate it with a passion. I think it makes strongmen look stupid. We waddle along holding this big weight between our legs. Every single time you do it, you end up with huge bruises on the inside of your thighs. And I just think it should be banned.
And one that is universally hated by the athletes?
I know a lot of people hate the duck walk. Universally hated events. I think a lot of guys don't like it when they do things like wrestling and man against man events, because there's so much specific training involved for something like that, and increased risk of injury on those type of events. I know I answered that other question about you shouldn't be thinking about injuries, but that's an event where often you put big strong guys that aren't skilled in those type of movements, and that's a recipe for disaster.
Julian asked, who's the strongest man never to win during your 11 years competing at World's Strongest Man?
So the strongest man, and I've said this, a number of times, I think Derek Poundstone, strongest guy that's never won World's Strongest Man. He took strongman to another level. When Mariusz Pudzianowski was dominating, this guy came in and beat Mariusz a number of times in competitions. He was setting new records on a monthly basis. Unfortunately, he could never quite get over the line at the Worlds. But when you look at his performances in other contests, he was phenomenal, and without question, the one guy that deserved to win during my kind of time frame at the World's Strongest Man.
Ernesto Barquette said, who is or are the most genuine competitors at World's Strongest Man you actually really enjoy being around?
There's lots of guys at World's Strongest Man, so this list is probably going to miss off some names, but off the top of my head, Mark Felix, genuinely lovely person. Both of the Stoltmans. Who else? Rob Kearney, lovely person. JF Caron, Zadrunas. There are loads of them. I could go through a whole list. Nick Best, really nice guy. Almost everyone at World's Strongest Man is a decent person. They're good guys. But those are, I guess, off the top of my head. You see them making that little bit extra effort with fans and things like that. So that's probably why I'll mention those guys. But all the guys are decent guys.
Archie Brinston asked, how big do you see strongman growing as a sport in the next 10 years?
I would love to see it getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I think it has the potential to. I think we need certain things to happen. And I've gone into detail on some of those things in other videos and posts and comments that I've made elsewhere, but I think it has the potential to be huge. I really do. I don't see why it can't be as big as something like CrossFit or even bigger. The fan base is growing all the time. I think social media has massively helped that, and we just need to get the organisation and structure of the whole sport, and not just one show, better and better.
Gabrielle Pickering asked, how did you qualify for your first World's Strongest Man, and how was that experience?
So my first World's Strongest Man, I qualified from my placing at Britain's Strongest Man that year. I think I was third or fourth at the British, and at that time, you can see over the last however many years, they usually take 4, 5, 6 British guys, so I got an invite that way. A couple of years later, I qualified automatically many times, and the year I qualified the most for World's Strongest Man, I qualified 5 times in 2012 by winning various Giants Live competitions. They have, every year there's slightly different qualifying systems, but Giants Live is the main qualifying tour. I won 2 of the Giants Lives. I was top 5 overall in the Champions League. I won Britain's Strongest Man, and I was also in the final of World's Strongest Man the year before. There was 5 different ways that I'd qualified that year, so that felt amazing. And then I got injured just before the contest and had to pull out. So that was probably the worst. Yeah, I did amazing, like that whole year. I had some brilliant performances and then ended up couldn't going. But yeah, the first time you qualify for Worlds, just, I think as a strength athlete, that's our goal, is to get to World's Strongest Man. I know so many great athletes that haven't quite got there yet, and that are just on the cusp of just taking themselves over that line. and it is an amazing feeling, but you always want more. Doesn't matter how you do, you will always want to do better. Or, you know, if you get there once, you want to get there a second time. If you get there and you make it to the groups, then you want to get to the final, and then when you get to the final, you want to get top 5, and it's just always a never-ending thought process of always wanting to do a little bit better.
Harrison Smith asked, what influences which colour tops are chosen each year, and separate colours for the heats and finals, and also which was your favourite colour top?
Oh, my favourite colour top. I really like my purple sleeveless top from, was it 2014 in LA? Mm-hmm. I like that one, and the green one as well. Maybe because I was in good shape that year as well. I was, you know, a bit leaner, and I just liked the fact that we didn't have the sleeves on there. What influences the colours? Probably the sponsors. It's not a question I've thought of too often. When a couple of years back, every athlete had a different colour, whereas now it's universal. They all wear the same colour, so they'll have a t-shirt colour for the groups and then a different colour for the heats. But I couldn't honestly tell you the reasoning behind what colour they choose. I don't think there is a particular reason. I might be wrong, but I'm going to guess that there's not, and it's just down to sponsors' preference, really.
Faith Unframed asked, what are the athletes doing between the events?
So between the events, the most important thing for the athletes is recovering, really. So they're going to be eating, they're going to be in their rooms chilling out, doing various recovery methods. The athletes, you know, some of them take physios with them some years. They'll have people massaging them. They have certain tools that massage their legs, like there's the Compex tools that kind of have different settings on. They'll put them on different parts of their muscles. There's loads of different things that they do just to focus on that recovery for the next event. But normally eating, sometimes chilling by the pool. If you watch Martin's videos, you can go and see him narrating a bunch of strongmen around the pool. That is a common sight at World's Strongest Man in between events. But yeah, just food, rest, chilling out, just trying to stay mentally relaxed and get themselves ready for the next event. While you're here, guys, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my awesome strength content.